in from Lagos, Abuja, Accra, Nairobi, London, Canada, anywhere in the world. We're a global community. So definitely we have members and intending members joining in from all across the world. Let's light up the chat box, please. All right, it's amazing to have everybody join us. And of course, here at AHRP, like I said earlier, we are a global community. And before we introduce our guest speaker for today, who is none other than Patric Awodu, let's just quickly go through the core values that defines us as the Association of Elite Human Resource Professionals, AHRP. First off, we have credibility. As members of this great association, it is expected that we demonstrate enviable character. We also have authenticity. We are the real deal in whatever we put our minds into. We make sure that we get it done with originality and authenticity. We are also a responsible organization. We know what to do, and we do it thoroughly. We exhibit resilience. We defy the odds. We are not limited by anything, capacity or anything. Integrity, we exemplify uncompromised ethical standards. We show empathy. We understand and share members' experiences and emotions. And of course, this is defined by a special committee which is set up to care for the members of AHRP. And of course, we also demonstrate agility, provide solutions that empower just individuals, but organizations as well. Our vision statement is to be the go-to source of competent human resource. Our mission statement is to create through coaching, mentoring, and our mandate is to bridge the communal gap that exists between human resource professionals of different cadres, and also to serve as a platform for learning, capacity development, knowledge acquisition, and experience sharing. All right, of course, at this juncture, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, who is none other than Patric Awodu. And of course, before we introduce him and get into the topic of today, which is what we've tagged Embracing Change, Overcoming Resilience, and Achieving Extraordinary Results. If there's one constant thing in today's workforce, it is change. And of course, in the era that we are in, new technologies, evolving workforce expectations, business disruptions, change is everywhere. But let's be honest, most people resist it, right? So how do we not embrace change, but also drive it and achieve extraordinary results? To lead us through this conversation, we have an exceptional speaker, one of the finest minds in HR, I must say. And he's none other than Mr. Patric Awodu. Briefly, we'll just listen to his profile, and then we'll welcome him on stage to take us through today's session.
Patric Awodu is the Chief Operating Officer of StreeCert Integrated Limited, SIL, overseeing businesses across agriculture, education, health, hospitality, and technology. With expertise in strategy, change leadership, and organizational improvement, he helps businesses drive competitive advantage, implement quality management, and achieve sustainable growth. A thought leader in change, innovation, strategy, and people management. Patric is a sought-after speaker and published author. He actively contributes to community development and is the founder of Take Responsibility. He's a senior Coulter Change Leadership Facilitator, a PROSTI-certified change management practitioner, a certified OKR Master Facilitator, and a certified quality management auditor. He holds a degree in civil engineering from the Federal University of Technology, Minna, with extensive experience in finance, education, health, and consumer services. Patric specializes in business transformation, operational efficiency, and performance improvement, guiding businesses toward measurable success and economic value.
Ladies and gentlemen, with a warm virtual applause, please, let's over to you.
Thank you, Prince, and thank you for that introduction. Could you please confirm that you're hearing me well?
Loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Good. And let me share my screen. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming in this hour. I know it takes a lot for you to cut short your Saturday to engage in continuous development. Change is the only constant in life. That's a quote that is often attributed to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. And if we think about it, that change is the only constant thing that we have in life. And I'm going to share another statistics. 70% of all change initiatives fail. 70%. And now this is true for individuals as well as corporates. It cuts across all geographies, all sectors, all industries, and all maturity levels, young and old. And so in this session today, we're going to be exploring why so few succeed at change, what they do differently from the rest of us, and take those learnings to try and understand the factors that contribute to those failures, the barriers, identify them, and address how we can manage them, and begin to share practical strategies that will help us foster that kind of adaptability we're looking for and lead and inspire change. The goal finally is to build a foundation upon which we can go forth and lead successful change. Now, while we're speaking, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I will encourage
All right. Apologies for the break in transmission. I think our speaker just experienced internet issue, so he will join us shortly. While we wait for him, let's remember that as participants, we're expected to be as active and engaging as possible. Here at AHRP, we know how we do it. Ourselves engaging, and so of course we want this to be a conversation. All right, it's not just a learning session or a webinar, it's a conversation. I want to encourage everybody to stay active and take your notes, and most importantly, engage. You can drop your thoughts in the chat box, your reflections, your questions, also in the chat box as we go along. Of course, we will dedicate the last 30 minutes of this session to answering as many of your questions as possible. So please take advantage of the Q&A session when we get to that part of the conversation. All right. Thank you so much. Our facilitator will join us in a minute. All right, Patrick, welcome back. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready, Prince. Thank you. Can you hear me? Confirm, please, that you can hear me.
I'm sure. Yeah, Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you confirm that you can hear me, please?
Please go ahead. Yes, please. You can reshare your screen and proceed.
All right. Okay. So apologies everyone for that. Nigeria happened to me. I don't. It seems my network just disappeared. I've changed network, and I hope that this doesn't happen again. So I was saying, because I don't know exactly when I was logged out, I'm going to start from the fact that 70% of all change initiatives fail. And this 70% is true both for individuals and for corporates. It's true across all geographies, across all sectors, and across all much 70% of change fails. It is a cause for concern. And that's why we're having this call, why so few succeed, what these few do differently, how we can take those learnings and improve our ability to manage and lead through successful change, identify common barriers that stop change from being successful, understand the nature of resistance and we can manage resistance, improve our growth mindset, and actually share practical through change. So my screen seems to be, just a moment, please. Seems I'm having some tech issues. So while everybody on the call, right, just simply type what exactly you think is meant when we speak about change. When we speak to change, when we are saying a change, let's speak about that. What is a change? When we're saying change, what do we mean by that? Could you just type on the chat? What do we mean when we say change? Okay, because change is here, and before we start speaking and exploring what change is, I would like to idea of what change is. What do we mean by change? A change is an alteration of the status quo. It's a transformation process, personal and in a corporate context. Anybody? Just in the next few seconds. Yes. Looking for or desiring results, a new start. Yes. All these are how we can think of change. But I want to be practical. I want to give classifications or examples of what change means for our everyday life. context, when we're speaking change, we're speaking about restructuring, process reengineering, change initiatives, strategy implementation, digital transformation.
Hi, Patrick. Are you with us? You're
So I'm back.
muted.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
back, Prince. It appears my data network is really so. Someone is mentioning audio is bad. Does it mean that? Can you hear me well, Prince?
Yes, you're
We
loud
can
and
hear
clear
you
now. Please
now.
go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Again, apologies once more. Nigeria is happening to us today. Let me go ahead and share my screen once more. And we can pick up from where we stopped. Okay, so I was speaking to change and what change is from an organizational context. I mentioned that change was restructuring, business process reengineering, mergers and acquisitions, strategy implementations, change initiatives or change efforts when you want to do culture change, digital transformation, and things like that. Those are the broad buckets that you see about change. From a personal or from an individual context, we look at change from the personal, career, and family, right? You're moving jobs, you're changing locations. When people go on Japa, yes, that's a change. You get a promotion in the office, that's a change. You have a new boss, that's a change. Weddings, when you have an unfortunate death in the family, all these are types of change that we experience. Now, what we've seen over the last decade or so, especially since the COVID, volatility of change has been increasing. It peaked in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic, and ever since then, it's been accelerating. Change and the kind of change we are seeing, the complexity of the change we're seeing is accelerating and accelerating constantly. Now, it's not just the complexity. What we're also seeing is an increase in the pace of the change, in the speed of change. Now, if you think about it, if you look at the telephone, the landlines we used to use, it took about 75 years for landlines to reach 50 million users. But when threads, that the meta clone or the meta clone that looks like TikTok, that looks like X. When threads launched, it don't use it. Think about that. That shows and gives you a kind of change, the speed of change that we're experiencing right now. The first iteration of GPT to the recent iteration up until a couple of weeks ago when this
Patric Awodu is the Chief Operating Officer of StreeCert Integrated Limited, SIL, overseeing businesses across agriculture, education, health, hospitality, and technology. With expertise in strategy, change leadership, and organizational improvement, he helps businesses drive competitive advantage, implement quality management, and achieve sustainable growth. A thought leader. Innovation, strategy, author. He actively contributes to community development and is the founder of Take Facilitator.
Yeah. Hi, Patrick. Please confirm you hear me.
A ProSTI certified change management practitioner, a certified master quality management. He holds engineering from the Federal University of Technology, Minna, with extensive experience. Patric Awodu is the Chief Operator of StreeCert Integrated Limited, SIL, overseeing businesses across agriculture, education, health, hospitality, and technology. With expertise in strategy, change leadership, and organizational improvement, he helps businesses drive competitive advantage, implement quality management, and achieve sustainable growth. A thought leader in change, innovation, strategy, people. Patric is a sought-after speaker and published author. He actively contributes to community development and is the founder of Take Responsibility. He's a senior change leadership facilitator, a ProSTI certified change management practitioner.
Hi, Patrick. Please confirm you can hear me.
Thank you, Chris. I'm back. So my apologies once again to everyone. Change is happening to me, it appears. So I was saying, the speed of change continues to increase, and from all projection will continue to increase. What we are seeing is that what was expected, we see change, the rate of change that was affecting business grow from 5% to 33% between 2022 and 2023, and projections that we ended 2024 with about 88% the rate of change affecting businesses globally. Now, we know that change is here. Like our favorite TV series, The Game of Thrones, if I should paraphrase them, change is no longer coming, change is here. And unlike the Game of Thrones, there is no metaphorical bad guy that we can slay and stop change from happening. So actually, change is no longer episodic, it is now continuous. And because it is continuous, it's going to continually accelerate. What we now need to do is develop the capability to respond smartly and swiftly to the change that is coming at us. If you take a look at the amount and the speed of change that we have experienced as a country since, let's pick 2022, or let's say 2023. We had a change of currency, we had a shortage of currency, we had elections, change of government, subsidy removal, floating of our currency, removal of subsidy from the power sector, right? From the power sector, and that just gives you a small subset of change that's happening internally. And I haven't even begun to list the changes that happen externally around us, from the rise of Donald Trump and his new presidency and how it's going to impact the Japa phenomenon in Nigeria and all the likes. Now, what this is showing us is that there's a lot of change that is happening around us. Now, where the problem is today is that the change that's happening internally, the success of that change is not matching up to the external change. So there is a gap between the external change that is coming at us and the internal change that we are successfully executing. Now, within this gap is a threat and an opportunity. A threat because if we do not successfully close that gap, if we do not successfully minimize it, what happens is that we are going to be unable to achieve the promise of prosperity and abundance that is coming with this fourth industrial revolution. But therein lies the opportunity that if we can close that gap as a country and as a people, and even as individuals, we can harness the opportunities that are out there, that are all around us, and actually succeed beyond our wildest imaginations. And so we want to discuss, what we're going to be discussing going forward now is what's holding us back. Why is it that this gap seems to continue to increase? And the gap, I mean, is the gap between the external change and the internal change. Why is it continue to increase? And what can we do to minimize it? And in some cases, eliminate it totally. Now, I want to speak to the nature of change.
Hi, Patrick. Could you put your presentation on slideshow, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So I want to speak to change. We have this idealized version or perspective of how change is, that it's linear. When well managed, it takes us to where we want to go to, right? If we use the tools that we learned from sessions such as this, we can easily manage it and bring everybody to our desired destination. But this is actually very, very far from the truth. Change is more like this, with a lot of valleys and a lot of peaks. And the reason why change is like this is because it is never just only one change. And when I mean it's never just only one change, I mean, if you think about it in an organization, it's never just one change that you're actually trying to implement. Several things are coming at you at once. And you might be, as internally as an organization, implementing a change initiative in response to a competitor's own moves in the market, while the external environment is impacting you. And most importantly, the individuals that make up these companies, that make up organizations, change is happening to them. And when I say change is happening to them, it means everything that is going around them is impacting them too. Their take home is no longer taking them home. That's a change. Someone just gave birth. That's a change. Someone needs to move houses. That's a change. And so all these change impacts the success of whatever change initiatives you're pushing. And this is a realization that every change agent needs to put foremost in their minds. Now, almost as night follows day, resistance follows. And it actually follows because of the fact that change is non-linear and several changes happening at the same time. And so we're going to try and find out and understand the psychology of how change, of why resistance and why people resist change. Now, let me ask, why do we resist change? And just to answer swiftly, because the network has actually taken some of our time. One of the reasons we resist change, or let me put it this way, there's an emerging science, one that is rooted in neuroscience, organizational studies, business history, and leadership that gives us some insights into why we experience resistance, both in an organizational context
and in an individual context. Now, what it shows us is that as humans and as organizations, we are hardwired to fear some kind of change and to embrace some other kinds of change. Now, what this science has surfaced is that humans generally have two systems at play always, the survive channel and the thrive channel. Now, these are systems or channels that have been hardwired into our biology by thousands of years of existence, particularly the survive channel. It's a very powerful instinct. In fact, it is what has kept humanity up to this point and probably what has made us the dominant species on Earth. But you see, as we explore the survive channel, you'll begin to see some of the reasons why it has become almost an albatross around our necks for some individuals. Now, what is this survive channel? It's like, imagine it as a radar system that is constantly seeking out threats. And when it recognizes a threat, almost faster than the speed of thought, it triggers responses first from your amygdala to your hypothalamus. Immediately, your body is flooded with adrenaline. Your breath quickens. The capacity of your blood to absorb oxygen quickens. Fat is burnt in order to release energy. And as quick as thought, you get the energy to respond to that threat. It's the flight or fight response that normally happens in humans. Now, this is very important. It helps us and it has helped us to survive. But the problem is this. In today's world, the kind of threats we are facing, they are not threats that are physical. They are nuanced threats and they are very complex. They are threats around our career, around the economy, they are psychological, and they are somewhat other than physical hazards that surround us. And these threats are not so easily solved. And so the thing about the survive channel is that it peaks, the energy that is released peaks, and after the threat is resolved, what happens is that the chemicals that the body produces stops to produce them. So we come back to the state it was before the threat appeared. Now that's a normal functioning survive channel. But what's happening today, because we are having a multiplicity of what our biology or our brain is recognizing as threats, that when our survive channel peaks, it hardly ever comes down. So think about it. Even in this session now, if I use myself as an example, if I allowed it, the fact that the data connectivity was triggering off and on could have triggered my survive channel. And if not controlled, what now happens is that I begin to feel anxiety, I begin to feel stress, I begin to feel fear. And it happens all around. And just imagine for a typical human, a typical Nigerian, your survive is triggered by, say, the fact that your salary is no longer taking you home, your take home is no longer taking you home, your black tax is increasing. When you finish from work, there's traffic to go home that takes you maybe 3 to 4 hours before you get home, and you now need to wake up early. All these are triggers that are not easily resolved. And so what now happens? You are at a heightened state of anxiety and stress and fear. Probably one of the reasons research has suggested why we're having high levels of burnout. So I want you to think about it. When your body, if you think about it, just try and internalize this now and think through the last week at all the potential triggers for your survive channel. Things that would make you anxious, things that will make you fearful. It could be the fact that it's one of the reasons why toxicity at the workplace can be such a drainer on energy. You just don't want to go to work in the morning. You know, you're feeling so down in your spirit. Yes, it's because your survive channel has been triggered, and unfortunately, it's been triggered constantly. And because it's been triggered constantly, you are now approaching stress levels and probably eventual burnout levels. However, there's another channel that is at play within us, and we call it the Thrive channel. This is also a radar system, but for the Thrive channel, it seeks out opportunities. And when it seeks out opportunities and the brain recognizes an opportunity, the body releases a chemical called oxytocin. It heightens up our passion, improves and increases our excitement. And the good thing about the Thrive channel is that the energy gradually drives up. It expands our minds, whereas Survive channel focuses it on a particular threat. This expands it so that we can be able to identify more opportunities. And what now follows is that because if opportunities begin to get some wins, we can actually stay at a heightened level on the Thrive when our Thrive channel is sufficiently activated. So the problem or the solution for us now, if we want to ensure that we approach change, both as individuals and as organizations, smartly and swiftly, is to ensure that we prevent this Survive channel from overheating, and we activate the Thrive channel sufficiently such that we are able to see the opportunities around us and work towards harnessing them. Remember, none of this is inherently bad. The Survive channel is very important. However, when it is overheated, it can subsume the Thrive channel. And once we subsume the Thrive channel, nothing works. And I'm going to share a story. About 2 years ago, towards the end of 2022, a particular company, I'll call them Company X, they had just changed, the board had just done a change in executive management, brought in a new CEO. Why? COVID impacted them. They had undergone a restructuring that led to some layoffs. However, the promised benefits of those layoffs, of the restructuring actually, had not begun to manifest. Part of the plans after the restructuring was a new product concept that they were supposed to launch. But because of all the fact that during the restructuring, morale was down, productivity was down, the innovative spirit was down, again, because Survive was overwhelmed, the Survive channel was overwhelmed in the entire organization. Because of that, somewhat like a startup had launched a similar product into the market. And in response, they brought in, the board thought it wise to bring in a new CEO and a new executive management. Now, when we came in and we began to do some focus interviews in order to help identify issues, why and how the new go-to-market strategy and the new strategy for the new strategy pivots that the new executive had decided on how it was going to work, what we realized was that you could feel almost tangibly the anxiety and the stress among everybody we were interviewing, we had contacts with during the focus interviews. You could practically cut it with a knife. It was that thick. Even for executives that were directly or were supposed to be leading the change, there was just so much fear and anxiety in the air as to what the new strategy was going to bring, because the restructuring that happened previously was not well managed, and because it wasn't well managed, the Survive channel across the organization was overheated, and because it was overheated, the Thrive channel was suppressed. They were not able to take innovative spirit and creative spirit was killed. They were not able to take their product to market, and that shows you how bad it can be when Survive overwhelms Thrive. And also, again, to speak, because change, I mentioned before that change is nonlinear. It is very nonlinear. It's very iterative. So even as I speak as to particular topics, I'll be interspersing it with practical tactics and strategies. So when it comes to Survive now, the idea is to always try to calm overheated Survive and to activate Thrive. And one of the things practically that we did when in this situation was, first, we tried to identify for the executives as individuals, what was triggering their own survive tendencies. Because the truth is this, if survive was triggered in them, there's no how they will be able to communicate, thrive, or to pass on or to build on the tribe channel among the rest of the staff. So we spoke with them. After we had a session, after a lot of conversations, we realized that one of the major causes, or what has caused survive to be overwhelming in the organization, was too much negative data. And what I mean by too much, this is again something we all should be very conscious of. Too much negative data. Negative news was coming every time of the day, at the close of business, at the start of business. Executive and staff were waking up to emails with negative connotations. And so imagine coming to work, you have just read an email. In fact, when we had decided, one of the fallout of this was that, look, they were going to speak to the organization and ensure, communicate to them, starting from themselves, from the executives, that they are going to reduce and totally eliminate negative information via email at the close of business and at the beginning of the day. Once it could wait, you waited until the day had started before you began to send such emails. So for instance, you had a foreman that was in charge of repairing of a machine. The breakdown of the machine has stopped production, and around 6 p.m. he sends a message that goes something like this: repairs not completed, production delay ongoing. Now just imagine, right, as an executive getting that mail at night or in the morning. You couldn't do anything to change this from what if you read the body of the mail. But you would go to bed stressed, you would wake up stressed. And so what we did was to begin to change the narrative. In this particular case, when you looked at it, the messaging was repairs 99% completed. There's a high probability that the repairs will be completed tomorrow and production will commence the next day. Now that was a more tribe activating messaging. And now that's something that is very, very important, very, very important to do. One, to take stock of those barriers or those triggers for survive, to try to mitigate them and to reduce the survive inducing noise around. One other thing we did was to suspend performance evaluation. Unfortunately, performance evaluation was used during the layoffs. So every time the word or the phrase performance evaluation came up, people became agitated. So we moved them from performance evaluation to OKRs, made it explicit that it was for goals management and not for performance, that it was not going to be tied to performance in any ways, and it wasn't going to be tied to compensation in any way. It was simply to ensure that we meet their goal targets. And that showed up. You needed to see how people embraced it once they were assured that this was not going to be used. This was not going to be used for performance evaluation. It was one way to reduce that survive-inducing noise. So you need to take a look around you. Find out those things that cause survive or that trigger survive excessively, reduce them if you can, eliminate them if you can, and most importantly, celebrate wins, no matter how small they might be. So we began to with the company, and the management of the company, we began to celebrate wins, actual and tangible wins. And what this does is wins beget wins and begets wins. And we began to, we now had a culture of celebration and a culture of winning. Anybody that is a follower of football, of soccer, you know how easy it is for a losing team to continue to lose and for a winning team to continue to win. I mean, just take a look at Man City. There's really not, it is the same team that did well last season that is playing this season, and yet it appears they just can't seem to win. Right? Again, because Survive channel has been triggered, they haven't gotten to the point where they have activated Tribe enough that suppresses the Survive channel adequately. And now I'm just going to share this fact that our response as humans to disruptive change is systematic. We respond in a systematic way. What research has shown, research by Professor Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she's the one that came up with this curve called the human response curve. And she came up with this curve in response to her research on human grief. However, since that time, it has been adapted to show how humans react emotionally to disruptive change. And what that shows us is that some responses are dysfunctional, just as we have discussed, responses that are triggered by the survive channel, and some responses are constructive. Now, the goal for you as an individual, when you're speaking to your change, or as a change agent, when you're working to drive or lead change in an organization, is to minimize the dysfunctional responses and accelerate or activate the constructive responses. Now, this is knowledge that you should, I encourage you to go home and assimilate, the same way that you have a systematic response to change that is caused by the individual. Now, let's speak to organization. All this while I was speaking to the individual, but the organization too, or modern organizations, have been designed primarily for stability and reliability. The classical organizations have not been designed for swift adaptability. No. If you think about it, it's about reliability, repeatability, control, efficiency. It's one of the reasons why you see so many, not so many, why there has been a move towards structures like the matrix structure, a holacratic structure. That's the structure that is being popularized by Netflix and their CEO. Now, structures like this try to mimic networks. And so what you see is that the limitation of modern organizational structures is the hierarchy, but what actually fuels agility, adaptability, and speed is network. And so what we need today is that dual operating systems. And you cannot live only on hierarchies. And now I know this is very hard for most of us. And it's hard again because as humans, we might say that we like changes, but we don't want to be changed. In fact, there's a quote that goes, people like changes, but don't want to be changed. So yes, a lot of people are uncomfortable in a dual operating system. We are comfortable with control. We want to know where our reporting lines, we want to know who we are managing, we want to know our span of control, the traditional attributes of the regular and modern day organizational structure. But in this day and age, when the pace of change is so rapid, and when you think about the information and decision latency that's inherent in a hierarchical structure, it no longer works for us. We need that network. And bringing it, we need that network. And it's a network like this that can help us to ensure that as an organization, we change swiftly and we change smartly. Now, one thing that I need to emphasize here, there is this often misplaced belief that successful change is as a result of larger than life leaders. Now, what research has shown, and what this emerging science that has been pioneered by John Cotter has shown, is that in almost all cases, it is not, that belief is actually not true. It is not just one leader. It's the fact that this leader has actually, either through conscious or unconscious effort, implemented some of the tactics and strategies that we're speaking here. And what they have done is that they have created change leaders across the organization. Because if there was such a secret source, then, I mean, if it was true that only certain leaders, larger than life leaders, could actually lead change and lead it successfully, then there will be no reason for us to be studying or even coming here to learn. But you can learn the tactics as an organization and even as individuals. You can increase your pool of change leaders. And by doing that, you can drive successful change and transformation efforts. Now let's speak more to resistance. Now, resistance is natural. It's something we need to understand. It's a natural human reaction. It's hard-coded into us to resist change that we do not like and change that we're uncomfortable with. And another thing is that change is seen differently by different people according to their particular frame of reference at that particular time. A change that you might embrace today, you might not embrace tomorrow. You might not be able to embrace tomorrow because your particular circumstances have changed. And that is also something we also need to be very much conscious of. Furthermore, when we see, for most organizations, they see resistant employees as non-rational thinking troublemakers. And this particular perspective is one reason why resistance actually continues to increase in organizations during the change efforts. When you see resistant employees as non-rational and as troublemakers, you give them no incentive to actually want to embrace your change. You have to accept the fact that their survive channel has been triggered for whatever reason, and that for them, it's a rational thought. So we just need to accept it. Resistant employees are actually shouldn't be perceived as non-rational thinking troublemakers. Then one other thing we need to be very conscious of when it comes to resistance is that informal opinion leaders have greater power than those of formal leaders. Now, what does this mean? Is that people in positions of formal authority, if they do not concurrently have informal power as centers of influence, then those ones that have that informal influence power will be a greater source of power during change initiatives. Think about it. I'm sure you have in your organizations people that when they say yes, everybody tends to say yes. And when they say no, everybody tends to say no. Those are your informal opinion leaders, your informal influence leaders. Now, if you do not get those people on board with your change is almost likely to not to succeed. In the example I gave, we had a situation where there was an executive. He had the formal power, but he also had the informal influence power. And at the beginning, when we did our impact analysis, he seemed to be someone that was impacted positively. We hadn't counted on the fact that although his portfolio was expanding and he was going to be controlling an expanded P&L, we were actually moving him from a center of influence, one that he had created and nurtured, to another division where he would have had to start from the beginning. And so informally, around water coolers, as they say, his opinion was against the change. And until we realized this and engaged and tried to ameliorate his survive responses, that was when we were eventually able to begin to get some tractions. So it's always very important to take note of your informal opinion leaders. And remember, there's always a mixture of overt and covert resistance. Always pray or encourage overt resistance. And this comes again to that thing about thinking of employees as non-rational troublemakers. If you do that, resistance goes underground. And if resistance goes underground, what then happens is that it's much more difficult to fight. It's better for people to speak out. You should encourage it. You shouldn't have a reason where you tell people to stop talking, stop complaining. You should encourage it as much as possible. What you ought to do is prepare to respond to those questions, those challenges. Ensure and encourage overt resistance because it's a valuable part of the process. In fact, sometimes with overt resistance, you can actually see it can actually surface better solutions than you otherwise would have thought. I will share again something that happened. Maybe I should just share it now. So again, during the same, with this same example, we had a reason. They were trying to improve their reduce the cost of their distribution channel. And they had spoken to the head of distribution and he was not in support. And so we decided to do, the executives and ourselves decided to do something different. Now, one thing I'm going to speak about later on is the fact that pattern interrupts help to shift resistance. If you can introduce a pattern interrupt, it's especially a positive one, you're more likely to get people to do something that you would like them to do or to actually make a change. And so a pattern interrupt that we surfaced and we introduced was to go to the drivers, the people that are actually the actual distributors, as it were. And through the challenge at them, we sat down and said, oh, look, this is a problem. We need to reduce distribution cost by so and so. What can you do? Or what can we do? So basically what we did was, where before solutions were conceived in boardrooms and cascaded down to them as fait accompli, we came to them and said, look, whatever you come up with, the organization is going to do. And they came up with a solution that we had actually considered earlier on, but thought that nobody was going to buy in because it felt it was going to be more difficult to achieve anyway. So we are taking one that was easier to achieve, even if the cost savings with this particular solution was not as high as the one that was eventually selected by the drivers. But the great thing about it was this: their active involvement meant that they were active participants in the change. And this is something, again, that we have to be very conscious of. One of the best ways to reduce resistance is to ensure the active involvement of as much people as possible in the change. And because we involved these drivers in the change, because they had a sense of control over what the change was going to be, they became active participants in the change. And eventually that particular initiative was a success. And that is also part of building change muscles. And we are going to be exploring now how to take some of these learnings about resistance, the nature of resistance, the fact that resistance is hardwired and coded into us as individuals, and that the design of modern organizations is not particularly suitable for swift and smart change. The fact that change is coming at us externally at a rapid pace, that the complexity, the amount, that is the volume of change is increasing. We're going to look at all this and still picking on some of the solutions and tactics we have already discussed, begin to see how we can actually develop that capacity to lead change. Now, there are fundamentally three reasons why people embrace change. One, they do it because they want to be more comfortable for an incentive. Two, because they want to be less uncomfortable out of fear, and for selfish reasons. Now, some people, as we can all agree, I believe, that some people change sometimes because they want to be more comfortable. Think about it. Let's use you are home on a Saturday, you're lying on your bed, and you're thinking of, you're tired. Just imagine you come home from work very tired. You come home, traffic has been so bad. You get into the house, you lay down on your bed, and as you're lying down on your bed, you're just thinking, I think a bottle of water, of cold water, would be so good right now. Now, there's every possibility that you'll be like, that bottle of water can wait. Let me just sit down and stretch my legs. Now, that's because most times we are not, the incentive to move towards comfort is not always that strong. Now, more people actually move towards change because they want to become less uncomfortable, and they do it more of the time. Now, so if, for instance, your test gets so bad that your throat becomes parched, you actually stand up and go to the fridge to take that bottle of water. And so that's where the second reason. But most people, most times, or a lot of people, a lot of times, do things because of the desire to satisfy, that's because they want to satisfy their personal desires. And as change agents, what we need to do is introduce pattern interrupts to change things around, to move people, to ensure that we either make enough of an incentive light the fire sufficiently, but not too much, or give them a sufficiently selfish reason for them to move. And remember, I spoke to you about the emerging science of change, and what has been surfaced. I'm sure some of you, especially those of us that are HR practitioners here, will recognize Kotter's 8-step model to change. However, we like to think of it now as 8 accelerators for leading change. Why? Because change is non-linear, and you cannot actually take these accelerators as a step-by-step process or sequentially. No, what you're actually supposed to do is you start them almost immediately, and you iterate as you go along the change journey. We have also Kotter has also surfaced 4 change principles, change leadership principles. Management and leadership, the fact that it's no longer sufficient for us to have management skills, we need to have leadership. Heads and hearts, we need to speak to the head as well as speaking to the heart. If you know you want change to succeed, it cannot only be about facts and figures. You need to activate people's emotions too. And you also need to, from have to want to. Now, having to, instructions are not enough. You need a volunteer army. You need people to volunteer to want to actually engage in the change and to drive the change. And the 4th principle is select few versus diverse many. Most change is actually done by a small subset of people in an organization. The usual suspect that's it here. If you think about your organization, there are people that they go to whenever there is any change initiative. Now, those are the select few. And that is probably one of the reasons why you have such an alarming rate of change failures, because we do not involve a lot of people. So when you do have to want to, meaning you activate a volunteer army, what you now do is that you involve a diverse many. Across the length and breadth of the organization, you need to involve a lot of people. And now, because of time, I will not be speaking towards all the accelerators. I'm going to be focusing on igniting urgency, removing barriers, which I've already spoken to when we just spoke about resistance and sustaining acceleration. Now, for igniting urgency, if you think, and when I mean that there's no urgency, generally, people do not feel an urgency to actually move. If you remember when I spoke to you about the 3 who actually embrace any change, because because of incentive, 2 because of fear, 3 a selfish desire. It tells you that, and most of you have experienced this, there are people who change. However, they are not willing to change. In fact, their hearts, their mind says, yeah, this is actually good. However, I don't want to do. It's the human reaction where we look at it from the terms of the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know. People are quite comfortable where they are.
Let's gather ahead of the return of our speaker. Let's put our questions and start dropping them in the chat box. It's time for the Q&A in a few minutes. All right, so I'll be looking out for your questions. later on during the session. I believe it'll be a very engaging session for those of us that have been here since the start. I'm sure we're taking notes. 24 to 48 hours. So we sincerely do apologize for the disruptions in the flow of today's session. I will join us shortly. Thank you so much for your patience so far. We appreciate you. For those of us who are just joining, whose session today is their very first experience of AHRP programs, we believe it's been worth your while. And for our intending members who are here, because you've enjoyed this session so far. This is the very first session for the year, and towards the
Prince,
end
I am back.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Pat.
It's one of those things that happen. So let me just quickly rush through the remaining slides just to talk about, so that we can, Prince, could you screen sharing? Could you enable screen sharing?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm going to be very quick just to make sure that I finish up while during this window of good data network. So to ignite urgency, things we need to do.
Patrick,
Let me
please,
just speak to some things you can do, right? First, you need to empower employees to speak and participate in the change. And sorry, Prince, did you say something? Okay, so as I was saying, I'm going to speak to the fact that if you want to ignite urgency, you need to remove sources of complacency. And when I say sources of complacency,
Yeah, Patrick, are you back with us?
I'm back. Again, once again, it seems I'm apologizing always, but as someone just said in the chat box, it's all part of change. My goal while I've been here is to ensure that my Survive channel has not been overly activated. So we'll just jump in and see how we can finish this within the next 10 minutes. And then we can go to questions. I will hand it over to Prince. Okay, so I was speaking towards igniting urgency and the fact that one of the best ways to ignite urgency is to remove sources of complacency. Now, there are several sources of complacency. One I want to speak to is too many visible resources. And when I say too many visible resources, I'll give you an example. If you have an organization with headquarters on the island, and you have all the executives driving 2025 cars, and yet in every meeting they're speaking with staff, they're saying that, oh, look, we need to cut costs, we don't have money, but yet the appearance of the executives, the appearance at HQ shows the fact that there's too much resources available. You cannot ignite urgency. So you need to be sure that what you're trying to achieve actually, the perception that the visibilities around you create actually matches the change initiatives you're trying to push. When there's too much happy talk from management, when you don't want, there's some organizations that don't like startups. Again, that can be a source of complacency. And one other one that I would like to just tap on is the fact, the kill the messenger syndrome. There are some organizations that don't want to hear bad news. I know how they say, there's this thing they say in management circles that don't come to your manager with a problem. Come with a problem and a solution. And so what happens is that good news flows up while bad news flows down, because employees sometimes don't want to come. They will suppress the bad news. They don't want to come to executives with the bad news, except they have a solution. However, executives are very much willing to throw down bad news. Again, that can be a source of complacency. When the actual news is not flowing up, right? Executives, senior leadership can become very complacent, thinking that everything is going well. When you also have lack of sufficient performance feedback from external resources or external sources, when you have closed the avenues for your clients to speak to you, sometimes it is until the client has left, until customers have stopped purchasing, that is when you now start getting that feedback. It ought to happen before then. That their displeasure, if it exists, ought to be showing up as some sort of feedback, and that helps in removing complacency. Right? Now, one other thing that helps with igniting urgency is for us to be aware about Rogers' law of diffusion. Now, this speaks to adoption. Not everybody adopts change at the same rates. We have innovators, people that adopt it early. They are the ones that go to line up whenever an Apple product is about to launch. Those are the innovators. They don't mind that there might be some kinks or bugs that they might have to walk through. They are the innovators. You have early adopters. Yes, they don't go to line up, but they will still be among the first cohorts to embrace a change or get a new technology. Then you have the early majority. Now, the thing about this is that to activate urgency in them, you actually need different things. And you cannot activate urgency in the late majority. There's no need trying. So, for instance, in the example I've been speaking to, when there was a particular initiative we are trying to push, and what did we do? After grouping the organization into innovators, early adopters, and the early majority, we went to the early adopters and asked for volunteers who would help to drive this change. And from that pool of volunteers, we were able to pick a team to drive that change. And why? We sold them the challenge. And because they were innovators, they bought the challenge. And once that happened, and we had that first initial pilot, we began the next messaging. And now I'm speaking to communication and how we can communicate to ensure we reduce resistance and we drive positive transformations. Now, the next thing we did was to start communicating why to the early adopters. Why is this necessary? Why now? What is in it for me? Right? And with that, we began to see more volunteers from the early adopters for the second phase. And once there was proof of concept, once the pilot phase and the second pilot had been successful, a large pool of the early majority embraced that change because there was now proof of concept. And with this proof of concept, after a while, you began to see the late majority. There was no need at that point for us to engage anybody that was in the late majority. It just wouldn't have worked. So when you're tailoring your communication, especially around your resistance management and trying to activate tribe, you need to be careful to ensure that you tailor your communication to target these individual segments of along the adoption curve. Okay, and something we also need to be very conscious of is change styles. Different people react to change or embrace change differently. Now, I'm not speaking to the speed of adoption. I'm speaking to how they embrace change, the how of it. Some people like to think of how people will be affected. Some are more interested, the analyzers are more interested in how things will work. Now, this matrix is a tax people matrix and a reflection action matrix, right? And so you have analyzers who are high tax and high reflection, and they're always wondering, how will things work? When you're communicating with people like this, you need to tell them the how. You can't tell them, they are not interested in how people feel. They want to know how. You tell them, you speak to them about how. For the drivers, they just want to know what's the next thing to do. What's our action point? Let's get it done, right? For the includers, you need to tell them, how can I get people involved? And in every organization, you see this kind of people. You see people that want to know how. You see people that are interested in bringing people into, including people, more and more people into the change or into whatever it is that is happening. And so once again, your messaging and your communication, every time you're putting out a piece of communication, you need to be sure who are you targeting, and to also ensure that you have several different contents for the different change styles. Now, so to build urgency, you need to be a change model or an urgency role model, address both the rational and emotional, be truthful, answer people's questions, prepare to answer their questions. Do not suppress people's challenges. Prepare before then to answer their questions. And if you need it, get help. Sometimes we want to go it alone. And I will encourage you, your company does not need to engage a consultant. You can reach out to any change agent or someone you know that is a change management professional in your network. Go up to them, ask for advice, ask for some lead-ins, and get that help you need in order to build that urgency and to lead towards successful change. I've shared this. I'm sharing this tool. It's an impact analysis tool. It's something I would encourage everyone to. It's a tool I would encourage everyone to use in order to identify how every staff or every group of staff is impacted by the change that is coming. It's by doing this and by finding out how they are going to be impacted that you can now begin to devise strategies to ameliorate the survive channel and to activate the thrive channels for those groups. Now, as I mentioned before, we have 4 change leadership principles, which I've spoken to. I want to speak towards the head and the heart. Now, you can't succeed at change, and you can't succeed at igniting urgency if you do not engage the heart. And in this case, when you're engaging the heart, you need stories. You need images. It's not sufficient to talk. It's not sufficient to send emails. You should share stories. And when we're saying sharing stories, I'm saying speak towards wins. Tell stories of when we were, the example I was sharing, there was this story that a group of volunteers came up with about a staff that had left in the last restructuring. He was laid off. However, He had parlayed his knowledge to become a consultant. And in fact, the company has started to employ him. And he was actually now a success story. So we used that story as a story to engage the hearts of others, to say that yes, it is possible and that it is not all bad. Now they were using it as they used it then as an example of a story that things do not have to go bad with change initiatives. And so, as I said, let's use stories. If we have opportunities for immersions, yes, they are more expensive, virtual reality and augmented reality. Yes, let's do that. If you can get your senior executive to be involved in team building activities, even it doesn't have to be on a Friday. It could be as spontaneous as possible, right? And which is one of the reasons why open floor plans became popular at one time, because when you have people sitting around together, as long as there's camaraderie, right, you can get an engagement of the heart for any change. Create sticky messages. Answer why now, why it will work, and what is in it for me. If you know you want to ignite urgency, you must create messages that stick, messages that are memorable. For instance, if I not to be too candid, one of the messages we are always pushing out with the example I'm giving was, if you don't do this, this will happen. For instance, it was a very short message, but very sticky. It became almost like an anthem, right? And because almost with that short message, we are saying why now, right? And then we now had also other messages that spoke to why it will work and what is in it for me. Now, so don't let up. This is sustaining momentum. Ensure one of the ways to sustain momentum is to celebrate success. Ensure that people understand what a win is. Encourage your team to come up with different ideas for wins. Be intentional about planning for your wins. And when I say be intentional about planning for your wins, is that you need to, if you're going to sustain a change, first of all, be very careful that you don't declare victory too soon. If you declare and you have a victory that's very early in your change process, what happens is that urgency declines and complacency takes its place again. So be very sure that you do not declare victory too soon. And once again, if you declare victory too soon, you can't sustain the momentum. So yes, celebrate wins, but don't declare victory, especially when it's a long-term change. Like, speak towards culture. Let me speak to culture, for instance. It's almost impossible to change a culture within 3 months. Culture changes are multi-year events. And so be very careful about celebrating, coming out after 6 months to say, oh, yes, our culture has changed. Very, very unlikely. Okay. Instead, look at it as a marathon and with mile markers along the road. And each of those mile markers, when you've gotten to mile 1, you celebrate, mile 2, you celebrate, mile 3, you celebrate those wins, and be very conscious about celebrating them. So you need to develop, this is something practical, develop a win strategy that covers how we work, what we do, and what we think. And some of the characteristics of this win strategy is that one of workplace wins, they need to be relevant, they need to be meaningful, and they need to be visible and tangible. I don't want to speak too much about this, but obviously I'll share my slide and you guys can read through it. Just to speak more about this, just a bit. The thing about celebrating wins and having a win strategy is that it creates a virtuous circle, and almost like a circle that reinforces itself. You're winning, you win, you win, you win, you win. And so what you now need to do is to ensure that as executives, as change agents, that around you, you remove barriers that could stop winning. And when you say barriers that could stop winning, there's some, if you have a culture of critiquing, if you have a culture that punishes failure, it might actually work against you, right? Because then it will be hard to focus on wins. When you have an attitude that a small win is not a win, that they are just doing their job, an employee has done something that you could actually conceivably think is a win, but you say, oh, they're just doing their job. Again, that's a barrier towards building a winning culture or ensuring that your win strategy works. If you have, when you already have, you feel that, oh, we already have recognition ceremonies and awards, we have staff of the year, and that because you have these awards and ceremonies, you don't need to actually celebrate other wins that are tied to your change initiative. That again can work against you. So what you need to do is develop that culture and environment that encourages and celebrates wins. You actually think about it, plan the wins, and work towards getting the wins. And once the wins come, no matter how small they might be, you celebrate them. And so I'm going to leave us here with books and trainings that I'm going to point you to that I feel will help you in your journey towards developing change capability and improving your capacity to lead change successfully. I would encourage every one of us to read Managing at the Speed of Change by Derek Connor. It's a book that every change agent or every HR practitioner should read. You should also read Change by John Cotter. I'm sure you're all aware. Cotter is the preeminent guru when it comes to change. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, The Diffusion of Innovations, and a book that I hope every one of us here has already read, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Obviously, you can partake if you want to learn more about some of the things I've just mentioned, win strategy, the Survive channel, the Thrive channel, the 8 accelerators to leading change. You can take some of the trainings from Cotter Training, the fundamental of change. You can become a certified change specialist or a certified change leader. So I'm going to leave you with these words from Benjamin Franklin. When you are finished changing, you are finished. So please, let's embrace change because we are not finished changing. Thank you. Prince.
Wow. Thank you so much, Patrick. This has been an incredibly insightful session. Of course, outside the disruptions from the internet, I believe everybody here has gotten value for their time. It's been very insightful, thought-provoking, and exciting session. Please let's show some appreciation in the chat box. Let's drop a fire emoji to show how insightful and impactful this session has been. Of course, very quickly, we'll just go into the Q&A session. And if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat box. You can also raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak very quickly. You can raise your hand and we'll let you speak if you have any questions. About the Cotter change management, Patrick, do you point us to any agencies that offer Cotter change management trainings?
Yes. So Cotter training for the first time ever is now available in West Africa and Nigeria. For the first time, individuals and organizations can choose to certify themselves as Cotter change specialists or Cotter change leaders. And they are also curated learning journeys, change and learning journeys that are available. And they're available through StreetSet Integrated Limited. If you're interested, reach out. You can reach out to StreetSet Integrated through Prince or through the AHRP. I'm sure they have the details. And we are welcome. We are quite excited about change leadership because we believe that it's an ability, it's a capability that everybody and every organization needs now. If you have listened to what I have shared, is the fact that change capability is no longer a nice to have, it's a necessity. It's actually what we like to think of it as a meta capability because it's a capability on which you can layer on other capabilities, right? If you, as an organization, if you're thinking of doing a restructuring, you want to implement lean, you want to implement lean management, you want to implement a process engineering, or whatever other capability you're thinking of, agile, right? Building your change muscles, building your change capability actually powers you up to do that. Okay.
All right, thank you. Most sweet, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Please, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Loud and clear, please proceed.
Yes, thank you to facilitator. It was a well put together presentation and learning. And I'm happy to, especially the last quote that says, when we are done with change, we are finished. And I'm not finished. And that's why I'm asking this question. In the course of your presentation, you mentioned that change is no longer episodic, but continuous. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So if it is continuous, what you are implying is it's happening like spontaneously every day. If that's the case, how then do professionals like us get to prepare for the change? Because usually what we know about change is, change is coming, we get the OD team, we get change expert and all that. But this one that is continuous, how do we keep up with that continuous pace and still ensure that we are able to effect it appropriately? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Modupe, for most sweet for that question. Like you rightfully said, change is now continuous. And why we say change is continuous now and no longer episodic?
A certified OKR master.
Is that the pace of change is so rapid that there's barely any distance between individual change events. Now, about 2 decades ago, you could see changes coming at a drip. And then an organization could afford to do a change initiative, say a transformation, a restructuring, maybe once in 2 years, once in 3 years. You could afford to change your salary structure once every 3 years or once every 4 years. But for most organizations, and I'm sure this is true for most of us here, within the last 2-3 years, we have changed. Most people have done some sort of change to their compensation structure at least twice, with more to come. And so because of this, because the impact, the change that is happening externally is increasing, as you have rightfully said, what we need to do internally now is to develop our change capabilities. And one of the ways to develop these change capabilities is to learn from insights from this emerging science, right? How to, as change professionals and as HR professionals, is to figure out ways to ensure that within our organizations, we are minimizing the survive channels to ensure that it does not overwhelm thrive. And we are activating the thrive channels within the organization and within we as individuals to ensure that the opportunity seeking radar is very well activated. And obviously, if you employ the other change accelerators, what that does is that you're able to lead more change successfully. So you don't, because organizations normally respond to external events with changes, right? With change initiatives. You're either doing a digital transformation because COVID came to us and we all had to stay at home, and because we're now doing work from home. But the thing is that it's not only digital transformation you're doing, sometimes you're having to do it together with a restructuring. And the only way to ensure that you can engage in multiple change initiatives at the same time and do them smartly and swiftly enough is to ensure that that change capability is present. And this change capability I'm speaking to is leading change. Now, it involves both the management tools and what you might call the leadership tools, which are some of the things I've spoken to you about when it comes to igniting urgency, removing barriers, and ensuring that you sustain change. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Elizabeth Jiboye.
Hello, good evening. Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you so much, our facilitator for today's session. It was an engaging one. I have just three questions. Number one question says that when you are talking about the resistance in change management, and what happened if we have leaders who supported the change, but indirectly the change will affect them. In the process, they have supporters that they use against the change. So how do we manage people like that? And it's glaring, or maybe at the end of it, you find out that this is the leaders who supported your change at the table of discussion, but behind you or behind the process, they have supporters that they have already set up to work against that change. That's number one. Then number two, you said that we should not celebrate our win so soon. Then what about in a situation whereby you have incentive to give or recognition to give or an award for those who perform well during the course of change? So how do we implement this so soon, since you said we should not celebrate our win so soon? Then number three is that I have someone that came to me and said that there was a change. I think performance change was implemented in the company, and it was tied down to their salaries. And some people perform well, and some that didn't perform, after PIP section for maybe like 2-3 months, they started implementing salary reduction. So I want to ask, is this process right for an organization to deduct salary for non-performance, or is wrong? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Elizabeth. I'll start with your first question as to leaders that might support a change at the table, but are resisting behind the scenes. And that speaks to what I mentioned earlier about overt and covert resistance, and also about the fact that opinion leaders during any change events, influence leaders and opinion leaders are very, very important. In fact, they are more important than formal leaders. And in that case, what you're supposed to do is, if you can, find out what is activating their Thrive channel. Because if someone is not supporting, it means that there is something that is activating while their survive is overheated. Or better still, if you have done an impact analysis, you go back and revisit it to see that you've gotten exactly what that impact would be to that person. Like I mentioned in the example I highlighted earlier, we had a case like that, where you had a leader that at the table seems to be supportive of the change, but at the water coolers was actually a source. In fact, he was a catalyst for resistance, and he was actually an informal influence leader. It was when we did a correct impact analysis and we realized what might have been his triggers for survive that we were able to actually develop strategies that tied directly to him. And let me be practical here without giving too much details. So what we did in that particular case, because we were not, the organization was trying to go out of its way to keep him, because if he becomes a supporter, he can actually be a catalyst for that change, was that we designed a benefit, we designed a benefit package, right? But beyond that, he was clearly put on a succession plan, one that would see him climb the executive ranks in a very few years. And the triggers for this climbing of the ladder of the executive ladder were clear, and they did not seem onerous. And so immediately he saw that there was still a path for him to success, away from his traditional cabal, right? He was very, very supportive. Now, it can't happen for everybody. Sometimes you have to take a difficult decision of letting people like that go, because if you keep them in the system, then as sure as night is from day, they are going to continue to be centers around which resistance will coalesce. So that's for your first question. The second one, when you talked about celebrating too soon and how you can still go ahead to celebrate, what I meant was that don't celebrate victory. And when I was very conscious of the word victory means here the fact that we have won. And when I mean we have won, it means that you have won, the change is successful. So if, for instance, you're doing a culture change and you celebrate victory after month 6, meaning that culture has changed. Once you've celebrated that victory, there is really no, people will become complacent. However, you can celebrate wins. You can celebrate the fact that a particular staff has started exhibiting the behaviors that the culture that the company is imbibing suggests. You can celebrate wins that somebody has done something that is in line with your values. Yes, those wins should be celebrated, and celebrated continuously and constantly, right? But it's very different from saying you're celebrating that your change initiative has succeeded. Be very sure that indeed you have completed that change initiative before you celebrate victory. But go ahead, please celebrate wins. Then when you spoke about performance evaluation and leading to deductions of salary and if it's right, although this is not a change issue, this is both a moral and a HR issue. I think most HR professionals will tell you that deductions are frowned on by the law, right? Especially when they are not sanctioned by the employee. But that's another conversation. Probably, I'm sure the AEHRP professionals here can give you more insights, and you can always reach out to Prince so that outside of this, he can help you and give you advice if you need. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Elizabeth, please confirm that all your questions have been answered.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, fantastic. Looking through the chat box, I see we do not have any more questions, and there are no hands raised at the moment. So I think we can, okay, you have a question, Stella. Please unmute and speak. Stella.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Patrick. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. So my question is related to the first question the last person asked, which is a bit different, but something close, which the response did not really give me my answer. So I just had to re-ask the question. As an HR, you find yourself in an organization where you know that there is a problem and there is need for change. And your suggestion or your opinion about change was accepted on the table. But in reality, after that discussion, it ends there. This is something that occurs frequently, like always. There's always a discussion. Okay, they accept, they even put so much effort. You see the energy and everything that yes, we are accepting this thing. And at the end of the day, after that discussion, that's everything just ended. What do you do? How do you help? Because on the other end, the employee are on your neck and not the management. And at the end of the day, it still fall back to you as an HR that things are not going well, actually. I don't know if my question is clear.
Yes, it is clear, Stella. And thank you for this question. It is it's a challenge that most change agents experience, especially when you are not at a position of power for you to initiate and drive a change. What I would say is this: if you find yourself in that situation, remember the words of or readings from Covey to focus on your internal locus of control. Now, focus on those things that you can control. And when I say focus on those things you can control is, no matter this change, if you break it down, there are some things you can do without having to go to the executive. There are some minor things you can do in your position as a HR. Now, you can use those things, those little things, and if you get wins in them and you get staff that are excited from those wins, you can use it to spark, even more conversations and actually spark the larger change or larger transformation initiative. One other thing you can do is to figure out why, in your position, figure out why executives are not greenlighting. So why they are talking the talk, but they are not doing the do, right? Why are they not greenlighting the change initiatives? Sometimes you need to find out. I know this as I've been in that position, and when most times it has to do with around finance, right? From my own experience, finance is one of the key attributes, one of the key reasons why sometimes these changes are not implemented. And one thing I have found in my experience is to figure out a way to communicate to the executives that they are not going to spend as much as they think they are going to spend in order to drive this change. And if you can do that, you're more likely to get them to bite and bite willingly into greenlighting your change initiatives. I hope that answers you, Stella.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Stella. Victoria, please go ahead very quickly. Victoria, you can unmute, then speak.
Okay, good evening. Thank you so much for the section. Now, my question is, you said something about when your survivor channel is threatened. This is like a life experience. So I'm asking this question, when your survivor channel is threatened, what next as an HR, what next should you do? Because it's at that point, it's like you've lost all options. You're scared of even getting to work. You're scared of what next will happen, scared of everything. So at that point, what should you do as an HR? Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to speak. I'm making the assumption that you're speaking now to what do you do as an individual to activate your own tribe channel when it seems that everything around you is activating or making your tribe channel overwhelming. Okay, so I'll say this. Figure out your activation or your tribe activators. What activates tribe in you? What is your source of energy? So I'll give you a very light-hearted example. I was somewhere today where the lady was speaking towards what activates her survive. She walks in her papa and she's like, almost every day she's thinking of traffic. And she realizes that every day she gets home, she's stressed. Every day she's leaving the house for work, she's stressed. Why? Because of traffic. Traffic and the traffic that she experiences, the fact that she has to drive to work, stresses her. It creates anxiety and fear in her, right? It triggers her survive channel. And so because of that, she figured out something that could help to minimize the survive and activate thrive sufficiently. She loves to listen to gospel music. So she began to listen to gospel music while she's driving, and she began to listen to messages from preachers, right? And it was sufficient enough that by the time she's getting into the office in the morning, she's singing, she's full of, in her words, she's full of praise, right? Whereas before she's coming in tired, she's coming in activated. Now, this is lighthearted. For a situation where from what I understand from your question, where maybe you're having a challenge with your boss or your organization is toxic, and because of that, you're going to work every day concerned with anxiety and stressed. Again, I would suggest look for your tribe activators, whatever they might be. There might be people around you that you need to speak to every day. There might be word of affirmations that you put around your offices and even in your bedroom. There might be messages you need to hear. Someone like me, what my tribe activators is reading. I love to read. And no matter how difficult things are, if I open up a book, my opportunity radar is activated. So you could just look for something. And in the event that your survive channel is still being overwhelming, then you need to exit that environment. Figure out a way to exit that environment as soon as you can. Because remember, for you, it is activating survive. One person's toxicity is somebody else's fuel. So for you, it's toxic. Leave the place, right? So that your survive channel is minimized. Thank you. And
So
one
much,
thing,
Patrick.
yeah,
Yes,
one
go
thing I
ahead.
should mention about everything I have just spoken to is you need to iterate, even when it comes to identifying your triggers, when it comes to how to approach a boss from a position of less power, when you're trying to push change initiatives, iterate. Your solutions, whatever it is, continually improving them, continue to improve them, step after step, step after step. And most importantly, try as much as possible to activate change leaders around you. When you have a diverse pool of change leaders, people that are thinking like you, then it's much more easy. It's easier, right, to drive the kind of change you want to see. So please, as much as possible, do what we can to create or activate change leaders around us in sufficient quantities so that you have a critical mass of change leaders that can drive your organizations to that change you want to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I think at this juncture, we do not have further questions. So it's been incredibly good discussion so far. I want to thank everybody who's taken out time to join us and, of course, ask questions and engaged. A huge thank you to our speaker for today, Patric Awodu, for sharing such valuable knowledge. Before we wrap up, let's do a quick takeaway challenge. In one sentence, please go to the chat box and type in your biggest learning from today's session. What's that one insight that you will be applying immediately at your organization or maybe in your personal life or in your family, right? Let's have those takeaways in the chat box right about now. While those are coming in, at the top of our screen, we can see the February Global Community Calendar. Today, we kickstarted session for the month as well, with a special learning session on change management. In a few days, on the 13th, we will be having sharing my HR story on the global community platform on WhatsApp for those already on the global community platform. The day after, we would be celebrating Valentine. So look out for that. For those on the AHRP Global Community Platform, there will be challenges, there will be giveaways, and a lot of people will find love within the AHRP Global Community. So please look out for that for those on the community already. On the 21st of February, we will have All-White Fun, where we'll have a lot of activities to just loosen up and have fun as HR professionals and thought leaders. And February 22nd, we will have another special learning session. We'll have another guest who will be taking through a very exciting and engaging topic. Please look out for that when the flyers come out. And the 27th of February, we would welcome new members of AHRP to the platform. And we have a lot of emerging members joining in here, both Zoom platform and Tube as well. So on the 27th, we will welcome most of them, of course, who have fulfilled the requirements to be a part of the association. Box, and use the link to request a certificate for this session. So please feel free to do that. For the attendance, your attendance is automatically captured. For those of you who reach out to your care officer or your own body to capture your attendance. Looking forward to the months to come in terms of upcoming programs for AHRP. In April, we would have our first physical engagement, which would be our knowledge sharing session, KSS. So look out for that in April. It will be a physical engagement, so please start planning towards that in April. Saving up if you need to, because it will be a paid session as well. And of course, in August, we have our event, which is the annual conference for 2025. It will be the 8th annual conference of the Association of Elite Human Resource Professionals. It would span between the 8th of August to the 30th of August. Please look out for the flyers once they are made public. Thank you so much for joining today's session. It's been very engaging. Thank you for those that have stayed with us from the start till the end. Once again, we want to thank Speaker Patric Awodu, and of course, thank you to all of us who have been such an amazing audience. Wishing you all a very productive and transformative 2025. And of course, I'll see you at the next HRP learning session. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And do enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend.